All right, welcome to our masterclass on a truly groundbreaking piece of UK law, the Data Use and Access Act of 2025. Now, this isn't just some minor update. It's a complete overhaul of the digital rulebook, and it's set to change, well, pretty much everything about our digital lives in the UK. So let's get right into it.
So this act officially became law on June 19th, 2025. And believe me, it lays a whole new foundation for how data is handled in the country. It's incredibly complex, it's incredibly comprehensive, and it touches just about everything, from how you prove who you are online, all the way to how massive infrastructure projects are built.
I mean, the sheer scope of this thing is just staggering. Just look at this quote. It's pulled directly from the Act's official title. We're talking about customer data, AI, national security, even the way we officially record births and deaths. This really is a piece of legislation that was built from the ground up for the modern digital age.
Okay, so to make sense of this beast, here's our game plan. We're going to start with the big picture idea, then we'll break the act down into its three main pillars. After that, we'll dive into how it changes data protection, see how a law this massive is actually turned on, and finally, we'll wrap up with what it all means for you.
So, what is this act at its very heart? What's the core concept we need to grasp? Let's break down the big idea.
You know, the best way to think about this act is to imagine it's a brand new digital operating system for the entire country. It's not just one app or a single program. No, it's that deep, fundamental code that dictates how all other digital interactions are allowed to run, making sure everything works together securely and efficiently. All right, let's dig into the first of our three big pillars. This is where the act gets really personal, because it focuses on the data that powers our everyday lives and businesses. Okay, so the first thing we have to understand is how the Act splits data into two key categories. You've got customer data, which is basically information about you, the individual, and then you've got business data, which is all about the info shared between companies. This distinction, it's the key to understanding everything else in this part of the Act. And this really shows you why they split them up. See, for your customer data, the main goal is to give you more control, to make it easier to take your data with you if you switch banks or phone providers. But for business data, the goal is totally different. It's all about unlocking its value to spark more competition and drive innovation.
Another massive piece of this pillar is the creation of what's called digital verification services, or DVS. Think about how you prove who you are online right now. It's a chaotic mess of passwords and uploading blurry pictures of your passport, right? Well, DVS is the government's answer to that, creating a secure, regulated, and trustworthy system for digital identity.
Now, a company can't just declare themselves a trusted provider. Oh no, they have to go through a really rigorous process. First, they apply. Then they have to get certified against a super strict government trust framework. If they pass, they get added to an official register. And only then can they display that official trust mark.
Okay, on to our second pillar. This is where the Act moves from the purely digital world and gets its hands dirty, modernizing the country's actual physical and civic infrastructure.
And a perfect example of this is the National Underground Asset Register, or NUAR. Seriously, just think of it as a digital X-ray of everything buried beneath our feet. And its purpose is absolutely vital, to stop construction crews from accidentally smashing into water mains or cutting through fiber optic cables. It's all about making street work safer and way less expensive.
And the Act reaches even deeper into our most fundamental civic records. Part 4 is all about dragging the registration of births and deaths into the 21st century. This means finally opening the door to digital formats for these vital records and, this is huge, standardizing the rules for how we handle centuries of priceless historical data.
And that brings us to our third and final pillar, which you could argue is the most complex one of all. We've talked about physical and civic infrastructure. Now we're talking about our information infrastructure. This is where the Act really gets into the weeds of data protection, especially for the age of AI.
Now, this is a really important point. This Act does not get rid of GDPR. Let me say that again. It does not scrap GDPR. Instead, think of it like a major software update. It makes very specific, very significant amendments to the UK's existing laws to make them work better and to make them fit for a world with technologies like generative AI. This table gives you a snapshot of some of the biggest changes. For instance, look at that top row on automated decision-making. That's about putting new protections in place for when an AI makes a big decision about you, like for a loan or a job, without any human in the loop.
The Act also clarifies the rules for using data in scientific research to help boost innovation, and it updates how data can be used for national security purposes. And the changes don't stop there, not by a long shot. The entire UK data regulator is being overhauled, creating a new Information Commission. On top of that, there are new rules for transferring data overseas and updates to the regulations that govern everyday things like marketing emails and those cookie banners you see everywhere. It is a top-to-bottom refresh.
So we've covered what's in the Act, but now for the really practical question. How does a monster piece of legislation like this actually get turned on? It's not as simple as someone just flipping a switch.
You know, it's a great question, one that a lot of people overlook. A law might get passed and get its final royal stamp of approval, but that doesn't mean all its rules suddenly kick in the next morning. The reality is much more gradual and, frankly, a lot more careful.
And the magic behind this gradual rollout is something called commencement regulations. The absolute best way to picture these is as a series of specific on switches on a giant control panel. The government issues these regulations over time to activate different parts of the Act at very precise moments.
And you can see that staggered rollout right here. So back in August 2025, a bunch of the rules on customer and business data were switched on. Then in September, key national security updates came into force. Come November, new rules for intelligence services kicked in, and then in December, the first parts of that digital verification service framework were officially activated. It's a very precise step-by-step process. Okay, we've been through the theory, the pillars, the nitty-gritty of implementation. So let's zoom out and answer the most important question of all. Why does any of this actually matter to you in your daily life? When you boil it all down, this Act is really trying to deliver on 4 big promises. First, more direct control over how your data is used. Second, a safer, more trustworthy way to prove you are who you say you are online. Third, smarter, more efficient public services. And fourth, a privacy framework that's actually built for the age of AI.
And that leaves us with one last thing to think about. This Act isn't just a rulebook for big companies and the government. It's a brand new set of tools for every single one of us, and it completely redefines our relationship with our own information. So the real question is, in this new world of greater access and control, what are you going to do with it?